So do you really know what your members are doing? An expert in retention, attrition and experience, today's guest will help you understand both your customers and staff. With over 20 years in the fitness industry, our guest has been the driving force behind behavioural changes, respected research studies and countless speeches. The episode will give you the skills to add value with your presence, improve your service offering and increase your income. Please join me in welcoming international speaker and founder of Retention Guru, Dr. Paul Bedford, to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Welcome, Paul.
Morning, Matthew.
That's a serious face you got there.
It's always a serious face. It always looks really serious.
You're just hoping that I got that introduction right.
That's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
So, Paul, tell me, because I wasn't sure, and I know a lot of people are not totally sure about this question.
Yeah.
So, what's the difference between retention and attrition?
Okay. So the way in which I look at it is retention is the period of time between when someone joins and when they either stop exercising or when they stop paying. And depending upon the markets we work in, depends which one of those two or if we measure both. Attrition is the number of people that cancel from your business. So one is measured in months and the other is measured in people. So they're not the opposite of one another like many people think. They're related, but then they're separate measures completely.
Okay. And do people generally get that mixed up who are running businesses?
Yeah, lots of people go, oh, well, if your retention is this, then your attrition is the opposite. And for me, it isn't. And the approaches we use traditional statistical analysis that's found in medicine, insurance companies, to actually track and plot what people are doing. And some of the things that the industry uses to measure attrition just actually have no value. In fact, I'd actually argue, in fact, I've stated it lots of times, that you might as well measure this, it's the same as measuring the size of a room with an ice cream. People stand up and go, I heard someone last week go, oh, our attrition is 2%. And when I say to them, what does that mean? They go, well, it's 2%. They can't actually control attrition. They need to measure it in people, not percentages.
Right. And so what's the correct scientific way of measuring those then?
Well, the approach that's most appropriate, I feel is most appropriate, is what's called survival analysis. And survival analysis was originally developed in medicine to measure how successful operations or medicines were after their introduction. So if you'd had an operation and they would say, if this is the day of your operation, how long do you survive after that operation based on that treatment? And then you can do comparisons between, well, if you didn't have that treatment, how long would you survive? So it's called survival analysis, and that would give us a clear indication of when people start doing something, when they stop doing something, or something happens. Interesting enough, the last event's called a termination, which is often what clubs use to describe their members. So we use that as our standard measure, and it gives us a number of things. It can give us our average length of membership. It can give us information about how long members are staying members at any particular point. So how many members get through from start to the first 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. And then we can split it by lots of different variables to see which factors are actually having the impact on the business. Right.
Is it something that businesses should or can have got the ability to do on a regular basis, or do you have to bring in someone like yourselves to do that?
There are software solutions out there that have been made for the fitness industry that will do it for businesses. Lots of businesses will really struggle with this because it's a statistical approach and it's not a traditional accounting Excel process. But I suppose the other thing that's, even if you can produce the outputs, it's interpreting those outputs into what your behaviour should be. So if you're looking at a survival curve looks like a decay graph, so it always comes down. And if there's a sudden deflection in that down, let's say at 3 months, most operators will go, look, there's a problem at 3 months. But they often don't know what it is about their business that they need to do or change or sort of recover that deflection point.
Right, okay.
So it's not as simple
as just looking at a spreadsheet each month and saying,
no.
Right, okay.
And the other thing is, if you've got half decent retention, anything you put in now might take 6 months to see if that had any impact.
Right.
Because you've already got people in the business and they might not be impacted by your new intervention. So it's not like sales where you can go, what did we sell today? What's our current sales promotion doing? You often have to put it in and wait, but you can get early indicators or early markers. And we've done a lot more work recently on being able to plot if people do this in the early stages, we can expect them to do this in the later stages.
Right.
So we can get an early indicator now, but we need a lot of data to do that.
Yeah. So let's take us back. So how did you get into this line of work? Where did your career start then, Paul?
So I started in the fitness industry working for my local YMCA as a volunteer gym instructor. And that was, more than 20 years ago. And I did all the basic qualifications that were around at the time. I even travelled to America to do some of the early CSCS courses by NSCA. And I'd come back into the gym and I'd work with people, and I couldn't understand why so many people came into the gym full of motivation and enthusiasm, but then within about 4 weeks, 6 weeks, they'd either stop doing the program that I'd written for them, that I considered to be perfect anyway, or they'd stop doing the program, or they'd stop coming in. And what I realised over time was that actually I needed to understand human psychology to get people to stick to an exercise program, rather than understand more physiology and kinesiology about how the body works. So at one point in my career, I stepped aside from working in the industry to study academically. And I went and did a master's in exercise and health behaviour. I followed that up with a second one in research methods, and then I ended up doing my PhD, because I have a very simple philosophy when it comes to individuals, and that's if you don't get their head, you don't get their body.
Right. Yeah.
On any given day, it's their head that makes the decision whether they're going to train or not. And I think our industry's really got it nailed in terms of what you need to do to change your body. But what there's a massive gap between that and what we need to do to understand people's behaviours and help them adopt or adapt to the fitness behaviours.
Right.
So that's what drove me to get started. And during that period, I've also managed clubs and run facilities and been an educator, and so I've done most roles within fitness.
So when you talk about that getting head right then, so are there, is it across the industry, are there people that are doing a good job of that, or is that going to be one of the next things as an industry we really need to focus on?
I think there are people already doing a good job of that, but I think there's also a lot of opportunities in that area. I go to a lot of the trade conferences and I go to a lot of the trade shows, and what I see is a lot of things that are very attractive to those already adapted to exercise and enthusiastic about exercise. But if you took someone from outside the industry and walked them around, a lot of people would be intimidated. So I do think there's a lot of opportunity. I think there's been more in the last 2 or 3 years. A lot of the research we've done is around interaction and the impact human to human and digital to human interaction creates. But we're at the infancy of that. And I think clubs have been able to be successful in the past because they had great equipment, great training, great PTs. But we've almost got to the point where the market that already wanted that has already got it.
It's got it, right.
And the rest of, if we look at the 75, 80% of the population that don't, let's say only half of them wanted to come in. We're not yet in a position to, I think, psychologically help them.
Right.
And I think there are the training plans, but there should also be psychological plans for people, which is a very different way of looking at fitness.
So are you saying then that the percentage, whatever it is in market, between 10 and 20%, those people have already kind of generally made that mind and lifestyle shift to say, look, working out and fitness is kind of what I do, and we're sort of circulating those people, but the other 80 or so percent that have not done that, they're the ones that need that sort of mind shift to understand that they've got to make it a habit. Is that right?
Yeah, almost. And if I think of a spinning wheel and people like a kids type roundabout, there are those people who are holding on for dear life in the middle who are into it, and there's those people trying to get on but get thrown off. Right. And I think there's a lot of people come in, never really adapt mentally to becoming an exerciser and get thrown off the wheel. So I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit would be a business description, but there's a lot of people who keep trying. It didn't work for me here, I'll go to another club. It didn't work for me there, I'll go to another club. They want in, But if you just focus on the physiological changes and the training, that doesn't bring them on board. So I think there's a step to be made.
Right. So do you categorize? So if you think about people before they've yet come through the door, do you kind of categorize them in those, like, these are the ones that are kind of into it, these are the ones that could be, these are the ones that not? Is there any?
Yeah.
There is. What?
Well, I use 3 basic categories. So my interest is always in, and solely in, people who want to use health clubs or facilities. I'm less worried about the people who are in running groups outside. I want people to come into clubs and use clubs. And I talk about new being people who've never ever been in a health club before. So they're new to exercise.
Right.
They might not be, so they're completely new.
Right.
Then at the other end of that continuum, I use the term savvy. Savvy is somebody who can walk into most clubs and get a workout. That doesn't mean they are savvy on everything you've got, but they know they could walk in, if they do functional training, they could, go over, pick up some battle ropes, get on with it. But there'll be areas of the club that they don't know. In the middle of that, there's a group that I call Yo-Yo.
Right.
And the Yo-Yos, I think, are the most misunderstood. Because the Yo-Yos have probably been a member of a club, not been successful and left, and then they've come to a second club, or they've come back to the same club. And when we go through our sales processes and our gym induction processes, the question we often ask them, have you ever been a member of a gym before? They can answer, yes, they have, but they often get treated like savvy, when actually they're more like new.
Right.
So it's like, oh, well, if you've been a member of a gym before, you won't want an induction. So we push away some of the services they actually need before actually even giving them a choice, or we make assumptions about them. So for me, I think about that. And then on the periphery of that, you've got all those people who want to be involved, but haven't yet made the step, or they're just cycling through from new to yo-yo out, new to yo-yo out, and they never become savvy.
Okay. So from a, I guess, business perspective, I'm a businessman, I'm in the fitness industry. Which one of those would you say represents the best opportunity at the moment? Knowing if you look in the developed markets, let's say North America, Europe, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think if you think about savvy exercisers have already adopted that behaviour, and so they're looking for a place that's going to give them what they want. They're more astute about business, the fitness business, in terms of if they're a group exercise person, they'll walk in, they'll look at a studio timetable, instead of going, wow, there's 120 classes, they'll go, I do yoga. They'll count your yoga classes and go, you've got 10 yoga classes and I can only attend 4 of them. So the savvy are much more likely to say, well, if I'm into yoga, I'll go to a yoga studio. Now, the savvy will also need less support. They'll need, they're more likely to use a facility as a utility, turn up, train, leave, as opposed to somewhere they dwell and spend time. So the traditional format of health clubs still works in areas where people want to use it as a utility. Those clubs that we see where there's big cardio areas, big resistance machine areas, free weight areas, functional areas, studios, I think they're going to find a real challenge in the next few years, because the savvies just go, well, actually, I just want what I want and I don't care about everything else. And I think we've seen some of that in the boutique market. But I do think there's a big opportunity for the new and yo-yos in terms of just finding an area, an exercise environment where they're just comfortable to train, where they feel like they're part of something. So I don't think there's one particular area that's really going to make a difference. I think you have to do different things in different areas.
Right.
You're supporting different types of customers.
So you have to kind of know really which. Would you say when you're doing a business, then you kind of have to really understand which one of those from a design and build, I guess, that you're going after? Would you say?
Almost definitely. I think now it's more important than ever, even in the emerging markets, because the emerging markets, if they do it properly, should not make the mistakes everybody else has made in the last 20 years. They should look at what's happened. They should look at the businesses that grew and then collapsed and grew and collapsed, and what worked and what didn't, and go, actually, let's just pick the best things. And so I think, emerging markets like Asia should be able to start with boutiques, but it should also be able to start with low cost. It should be able to start with the best of everything. Just in the way they develop their businesses, I do think there's that possibility.
Yeah. So do you think, and I know I won't sort of call them out, but I know there's certain brands or companies that own different brands, and they kind of have their their sort of low cost starter model, which my guess would be for that more new and yo-yo type of client. They have the boutique, which would probably be the savvy, and they've kind of got the sort of premium service, which I guess I don't know what it is, but yeah. would you say kind of having this portfolio approach of you as an investor would probably help to
I think you can mitigate some risk by having multiple types of products, but I'd certainly have them branded as individual products. I wouldn't have a house of brands. Like here's Bedford's Lowcost, here's Bedford's boutique, here's Bedford's premium. I'd have distinct brands, distinct marketing, and separate them out. And I do, I suppose, worry at some point when I hear big operators going, "Oh, we're going to go into the boutique market." And I'm thinking, well, actually, what makes boutique is often the fact that it is very contained, it's very owner-operated, it is very small. And I see a lot of big operators looking at the building, the equipment, and saying we can replicate that, where actually the experience is the product. Mm-hmm. And I can go and replicate perhaps what some of the more boutique operators have done in terms of buying the same equipment, painting logos on the walls, having the same process, but it's the experience is the product for boutiques, not the equipment. And I think that makes a real difference.
That's a good point. I guess one of the ones I was thinking of is Equinox, where they've got their SoulCycle and Rumble. Yeah. They've got their Blink. Yeah. You wouldn't know that they're part related, but I guess when you've explained this, it sort of makes sense of.
But here's something from the data. Like I've been fortunate to be able to share data and conversations with people who work within those organisations, and this is public knowledge. It was presented at some conferences and stuff. But the people using Blink, which is their low cost model, the number one thing they searched for in the club on their phones were classes. So Blink did a very good strategic move with linking up with, obviously they already own SoulCycle, so they're going to nudge in the direction of SoulCycle. But they looked at what other types of classes the Blink customers were purchasing and are either working on developing products to match those needs in separate studios, or they've linked with types of studios that those customers are searching for. Because Blink are saying...
Some of them are next door to each other, actually. Yeah.
And they're saying, well, we're not even going to try and be Blink that does Group X.
Right, that's interesting.
We're Blink, but we'll partner with for our customers to get to use that.
Yeah.
So it's a very... I think people are looking at business models in a very different way. And I know when I've been mapping stuff out recently, it used to be really simple. Small clubs, big clubs, nice straight line, low price, high price, low end, premium, and it was really easy. Now it's just like the big bang. It's just gone all over the place. It's like, so people pay $35 for a class, but they only pay $17.99 for a month. And we've also, unfortunately, some of the data I've seen, we've been able to look at things and see that people who are members of Lowcost also go and buy boutique. So they keep a low-cost membership for their general fitness, but they're actually using boutique classes to complement that or supplement that, almost in some cases like a social night.
Right.
So it's like run on the treadmill here, but go and have fun in the boutique.
So do you think when talking about that then, do people's behaviours change then in different situations, would you say?
Yeah.
They do?
Yeah. And I think I think we used to think, from a psychological perspective, we used to think that if we thought one way, then we'd behave appropriately. But actually, a lot of the research around behaviour now is actually if you behave like that, your thinking changes to meet the behaviour. So what we thought was inappropriate behaviour, if we start doing that behaviour on a regular enough basis, we change our mindset. So sometimes, in fact, a lot of the work I do with clients is actually if we can change people's behaviours, we change their mind, as opposed to changing their mind to get them to do a certain behaviour.
Right.
So you almost have to fake it till you make it. It doesn't matter whether you're motivated to come and train or not, because again, it was thought motivation drove behaviour, but actually you can get as much motivation from doing the behaviour and then be motivated because you're doing it, as opposed to thinking, I need to do this.
Right.
Don't wait for motivation, just get on with it.
Let's go. Yeah, so it sounds as though it's not very straightforward at all then. So you've got three groups, is that right? You've got the savvy, the yo-yos and the new.
Yeah.
So for someone who's listening to that and thinking, right, I thought I understood it, now I'm confused.
Yeah.
What are some of that, so if we're looking at, so first thing you do is kind of, I guess, get an idea of where your members are. So I guess if you're in a city centre, then my guess is there's probably going to be more of the sort of savvy type in general, I guess, in developed markets. So if we look at those three boxes then, so what would be some of the sort of key simple takeaways you could do to sort of do a good job at, at servicing those different types of members?
So let's start with the savvy, because if you're in a central business district, somewhere like a downtown financial area, you are going to get a lot of people who are experienced exercisers, and you'll get a proportion who are new. But with the experienced ones, you don't want to slow them down when they start. So you don't want to say, okay, Matthew, I know you've been training for years, but you're going to have our gym induction, because you're going to nod and smile, and in your head there's going to be a lot of other words going on. You're thinking, or you'll book it and then not turn up, and then that's a waste of people's money and time. So I think the first thing with savvy is respect the fact that they've got some experience. But all of my clients, I always say to them, the savvy exerciser must meet a member of the staff before they can use the gym. That doesn't mean they have to have an induction, but they must meet someone who represents the company, just so they've got a visual point of, oh, okay, I've gone in today, I'm starting I'm the new member, I've got to meet Matthew just to say hi before I go and do my first workout. We exchange some pleasantries, then you've got at least one point of contact where if you're, actually, I've never used that machine. Can you show me how that works?
And just to jump in on that, I know that you spoke before about the sort of interactions and the importance of those. Just as you're talking about that, can you sort of mention about that? Because is it right that, if you go from sort of 1 to 2, 2 to 3, the more interactions you can get, the longer these people are going to stay, is that right?
So basically, so if I look at it purely from a retention perspective, not from a physiological change to my body, the training results perspective, there's a couple of numbers to bear in mind. As long as people visit once per week, they're less likely to quit, significantly less likely to quit. Once a week isn't sufficient to change your body.
Right.
So let me get there. I know that.
And there's a difference between wanting to change someone's body and keeping them longer. Okay.
Yes. And if you're an operator, if you're the business side of things, you might go, well, actually, I want people to change their bodies, but actually I need them to come in first of all in order to do that. And as long as they come in once a week, they'll keep coming in. Now, it could be that they're doing other things outside, that's fine. So once a week is the threshold. If as soon as they drop below visiting once per week, or what we call 4 times per month, the risk of them cancelling goes through the roof. So as long as they're coming in Monday night and doing something, fine. Now, if when they're in, they have an interaction with a member of staff, the chances of them coming back or staying a member next month go up by 20%. Actually, let me rephrase that. The risk of them cancelling reduces by 20%. If they come in and I speak to them on 2 or 3 occasions within a month, the risk of them cancelling drops to 50%. If I speak to them on 4 or more occasions, which requires 4 visits, the risk of them cancelling drops by 80%.
Wow.
Now, so it's really important that we get them to visit, because if they visit, we can interact with them. Yeah. And bizarrely, if we interact with them, we can prompt them to visit again. Right. So we can create this sort of virtuous cycle of you do something, we do something, you do something, we do something, and it keeps the wheel moving. There are different types of interactions you can do, and some of the most sort of advanced forms of interaction where you actually with the customer or the client, and you're getting them to make commitments about behaviours. And a simple one might be, when are you in next? I'm in next Monday. The one interaction can reduce the risk of cancelling by 74%. So you don't need 4, you need 1, but you need the right type of interaction. Now, some customers don't want to interact. Some of the savvies definitely don't want to interact because they're using it as utility, in, out. They just want to get their workout done. But they also do want to be acknowledged or recognised they've made an effort today. So they may not have time for a conversation, but they do have a desire to go, Matthew, I saw you this morning. Thanks, well done for coming in. When will I see you next? Will I see you tomorrow? And you might go, yeah, I'll be in tomorrow. But those interactions are really, really important. I think the other thing to bear in mind is that the way in which customers rank those interactions varies by staff and by activity. So if someone walks through reception to a club and the receptionist says hi, on a scale of 0 to 10, they might rank that as a 3 or a 4 because they expect reception to say hi. If a gym instructor, personal trainer or group exercise teacher speaks to them while they're doing their activity, they rank that much higher because they perceive that person to be more relevant to what they're there to do. So they rank that higher. Now, if we think about front of house, the time when that goes from a 3 to 4 up to a 9 or 10 is when front of house are solving problems or answering questions. So if someone walks in and says, oh, what classes are on today? And the reception team can go, oh, it's this, what do you normally do? Oh, you'd like this. That ranking goes up really, really high. But just the normal, good morning, how are you, is low. So if we can operationalise, make almost automatic some of the basic processes like entering and exiting the club, like we do with swipe cards, it can actually free up time for our front of house staff to do something that's of more value to the customer.
Right.
So we can play around with the types of interactions that happen, where they happen, and the timings of when they happen to get the biggest impact.
Right.
So that's right time, right place, right content.
And how would that work in with, we'll come back to the sort of different types of customer game, but so a lot of the low-cost clubs where there isn't many staff in, do you think that works against them then, not being able to do that? It does. And
I'll try and find another way of describing it, but they set up their whole agreement with the customer based on transaction. It's about the price. It's never about the service. So they don't tend to build a relationship with the customer because it's mainly a transactional process rather than a relationship process. And the work that I've done, I've worked with quite a lot of low-cost operators now. And there's the idea that if you sign them up cheap, you keep them on a month by month so they can cancel whenever they like, they'll stay forever. Doesn't happen. Really doesn't happen. You get a huge volume, so that's okay, because you get a lot of people going through that process, but they don't tend to stay, or they'll stay for a period, then have a break, stay for a period, have a break. So I know in some of the UK data that I've looked at and some of the US data, we see that over a 12-month period, someone might be a member for a total of 9 months, but they go 3 months, month off, 3 months, month off, 3 months, month off. So over 12 months, the low-cost operator, actually the revenue they get is only 9 months worth of revenue, even though they maintain their membership or continue a membership over a 12-month period.
Right.
So I think there was a lot when the low-cost market started that if you don't charge them very much and you make it easy for leave, they'll just carry on paying. Actually, the customer's more savvy than that. And they go, well, I can cancel this month, I'm not going to be here, I might as well cancel, save my money, come back. And if you, like I have, I joined 8 low-cost operators on one day and remained a member for 6 months to see what all the communications were. I only have to wait 3 days to get an offer to rejoin. And they're all going, we'll give you no joining fee. So they understand that getting people back on board, they have to keep getting back. So they'll churn or turn over a lot, but probably about 30 to 40% of their customers have been customers before.
Right.
They're just returning customers. So whether you call them new or just renewals would depend on the business.
And I guess if you are low cost, then to put a fix where you've got people that are going to have this interaction will add cost to the business.
Yeah.
Give us, and I've heard some numbers from you before, but give me an idea of by getting people to stay longer, what sort of impact can that have on a traditional small group of fitness clubs?
Okay, before I do the small one, let me do low cost.
Okay.
Let's just continue that conversation for a second. So one of the low cost operators I worked with, we had a lot of data, 800,000 records we looked at. And 10% of the customers joined and never visited. but they paid for 1 to 2 months. So let's say that was £20, so they get £40 per customer. Customers who joined and only visited once, there was about 10% of them, but they stayed up to 5 months, 3 to 5 months. So the revenue generated even there is somewhere between £60 and £100. So one of the first tasks and activities they asked me to work on was, how do you get people, Paul, help us get people who've never come to come once? Because from a revenue standpoint, that just pushes it up. So, now 10% on 800,000 is 80,000 people. 80,000 people, can't do the maths in my head, 80,000 people, but an extra £60 per 8,000 people, that's a significant amount of money. And the only thing you had to do was get them to come once. So from a business perspective, huge. You take some of the more expensive options within the industry, and I'm just going to round the number up because it makes it easy for my head to do. But let's say someone's paying £100 a month. You actually don't have to do an awful lot to get them through to the next month. And so if you've got a business of 5,000 people and they're paying £100 a month, over the lifespan of those 500, so not next month, or 5,000 people over, 5,000, one extra month at £100, that's a lot of revenue. Yeah. I can't do it in my head. I'm thinking it's 50,000, it's probably 500,000. I know one of the big chains that I did work for in the States, we looked at, and if they got all of their customers to stay one extra month, now their average length of stay for their customers was already 13 months. But if they went from 13 months to 14 months, that'd be worth $28 million a year, $28 million extra to their revenue. And it would probably take them about 2 years to get that.
Wow. So just keeping people longer, or getting them to come in the first place, can have a significant impact.
Yeah, not only that, but we've seen, again, with different data sets we've got, and these tend to be more of what I would call the destination clubs, the clubs that have got bars and restaurants, and you go there to dwell. So they're more like a country club, even if they're in the city. You can end up generating 40% extra revenue per member after about 9 months, additional to their membership fee. So if their membership's 100, after about 9 months, you're probably going to get 140 out of them per month, because they get into the habit of coming in, working out, I'll grab a coffee. Yeah. That one-off coffee becomes part of the routine. So it's now, I go to the gym, I have a coffee. Oh, well, while I'm having my coffee, I have this, or I grab a smoothie. And that all adds up. But it seems to stack up over time, and has to become part of the behaviour.
Yeah, I can see that. When I was in London with my family, it started, I used to go on my own, then my wife came. Yeah. And as my children grew up, it was like, okay, well, they were in the creche. Yeah. Suddenly it was breakfast, and then it was like, oh, look at the time, all right, it's lunch. Yeah. And so your habits change of, well, I'm not going to go to this restaurant, we're going to eat here, and you kind of know what's on the menu, and so I can kind of understand that, actually. Yeah. But you've got to be coming in on that regular basis for that to be part of your choice, I guess. Yeah.
And some of the sites that I would describe as utilities, where people just come in, train and leave, if they tried to do that, it wouldn't work, because they're competing with specialist coffee houses. They're competing with, the people who do that for a living. And so I think you have to make a decision on, are we somewhere that people come and dwell, or are we a utility and we just really focus on what we do well, right, which is the fitness side of it, and we leave the coffees and the shakes to Whole Foods and Costa Coffee and Starbucks, and I'm not suggesting any of them are quality, but we leave it to them because that's what they do.
Well, I've seen some boutiques where they have partnered up with kind of juice companies that are on the front or on the side, and that's convenient, I guess.
Yeah,
if you can,
and that makes sense if they can do it to a quality that matches the place down the road. But if you can't, just having a vending machine's not going to do it.
Right, yeah, makes sense, yeah. So, okay, so coming back then to these different groups.
Yeah. So I said about the savvy. Yeah. The savvy, you want to give them respect for the fact they've educated themselves, they've got to the point where they can come in and train. The new, you need to provide them with more support. So the idea that we might just give them a 30-minute, 60-minute gym induction, for me is ridiculous, because the sophistication, while the equipment now and a lot of the services have been made simpler to use, it's still a lot to try and learn in a short period of time. And in psychology, there's a thing called cognitive load, and that's about how much thinking you have to do to remember it. Now, the example I usually give is driving lessons. When most people get driver education, driving lessons, they sit in the car, the first lesson, they just get to go round the block and that's it. And then over 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 or more lessons, you build up your skills and competencies. Yet often we expect people to be able to do all the things in one 60-minute session, and then we go, good luck. And the cognitive load is so huge that they can't do it. I think the other thing is as well, when I'm looking at these processes for a lot of businesses now, they're trying to push so much in, or there's so much extra to add now. You've got to download our app, you've got to have a 3D body scan, you've got to have this. A client of mine recently, we mapped out the 60 minutes. The customer actually spent 12 minutes being educated about equipment, because the rest of the time was actually, these are all the things we need to do to set up.
All upselling.
All upselling. And, if I break away from that and say, look, if you were taking someone in yourself who'd never exercised, and I use my mum as an example, how long would you spend with her showing her how to use a bike, a treadmill, a chest press? How far along the journey would you look at introducing functional exercises? Yeah, you could introduce them straight away, but in terms of her confidence and competence in coming in, what would she get? I think I think too many clubs think when they do their induction processes as a one-off, rather than perhaps the first 3, 6 or 12 months, and say to people, in the first 3 months, we're just going to focus on this. You're going to get changes in your body, but then we're going to start layering in these other activities if you want them. Yeah. And if you don't, you don't.
And I guess that probably helps, because it's kind of leading you into a second and third interaction, which is probably, as you say here, is important that they have. So it's like, well, we'll start on this one, then we'll get you, then come see us in a month, and we'll show you what's, where you need to be looking at next, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I know I keep referring to psychological stuff, but it's really, for me, there's an element. There's a thing called the Zeigarnik effect. Now, the Zeigarnik effect is used really effectively in gaming, and not to be confused with gamification, but it's used a lot in gaming. The Zeigarnik effect is we like to have a sense of we started and finished something. So we like parameters of a beginning and an end. Now, often when we give people training programs, there's a beginning, but there seems to be an infinite end, and our brains don't cope well with that. So we like to know, TV shows, how many episodes have I got to watch? We want to know that when it starts. Is this 6 episodes? Is this 17 seasons of 23 episodes? We need to know that. And so I think we're really missing a trick in terms of exercise programming, in terms of harnessing this Zeigarnik effect. It's a 6-week program. It's a 12-week program. After 12 weeks, we'll move on to this. I think some of that we used to do in the past, because we'd give someone a program card and say in 6 weeks, we'll update that. And then they never followed the program and we never followed up, and it drifted away. But I think, with the current technology, we could do so much more to harness the behaviours of exercise and get people adapted to exercise. But I think we miss a trick. I think we're so desperate sometimes to get them involved. We go, oh, and you could be doing this. And it's like, whoa. They never put you in a Formula 1 car when you start to learn to drive. Yeah. But sometimes we go, that's where you should be. And it's like, whoa, the gap's too big.
Well, and I guess even if you look at anything, even like martial arts, and you're very much starting, you're doing pretty boring stuff over and over again, and there is that progression. Yeah. But it's slow, and you.
But you can see the steps.
Yeah.
I was involved in a lot of jiu-jitsu, traditional jiu-jitsu when I was young, and you came in, you wore a white belt. You knew the next belt was a yellow belt, but there was a clear definition. If you want a yellow belt, you must be able to do these things. You want the next belt up, you need to be able to do these things. If you wanted a black belt, you had to be able to do all of those things. And you knew it would take you 3, maybe 4 years if you went on a regular basis to get to black belt. But there were defined steps, and it was really clear. Everybody in the room knew where you were and what you were capable of. So if you ever got up to spar and you had a white belt and there was a black belt, they never expect the white belt to win because it's really clearly defined. In fitness, we don't really have that. You know, I can look in the gym, some people look fit, some people don't. I don't know where they are on their journey.
That's an interesting one. Have you ever thought of doing some of your surveys on, or have you done it on like sort of places like martial arts clubs where they have that structure built into it?
Well,
no,
I haven't, because obviously we're kept really busy within fitness. But I have had investors come to me and say, we're thinking of creating this fitness product or service that has grading types within it. But what the struggle is around identifying what the defined next step would be. You know, I wanted to make it all based on skill. You know how to use this area, you know how to use this area, you know how to use this area. They wanted to do it on VO2 max and body fat percentage, on more physiological measures, and I wanted to do it on skill. Right. And that wasn't part of where they wanted to go with their business. So
it's something for someone to think about, definitely. Yeah. I guess. Yeah, it's quite interesting. So okay. So what's the next group then?
So we said that the new need support.
Yeah.
But I think also the yo-yo need the same support as the new, if we get it right. Now, if, depending on how you present things, and I would always suggest you present them as a choice, because we know people are more likely to stick to something if they're given choice over something, whereas if you're told, you get what's called reactance. We push back. Even if we think it's a great idea, we go, I didn't have that idea, I'm not doing it. So rather than forcing people down, if you've got someone who's a yo-yo, I'd be saying to them, okay, so you've described your previous experience to me, which was whatever it was, and this is where we are now. Now I've got an option for you. You can either have we'll just let you go and train, meet a member of the staff, or if you want, we can support you with some additional follow-ups. They might only be on the gym floor for 5 or 10 minutes. We'll check in with you every 4 weeks for specifically, but it'll all be on the gym floor. I think you'll find a lot more of the yo-yos go, actually, I want the support, because they didn't get it the first time they tried it, but having that support is something they need. So I think it's just that between, for me, those three groups, there's the savvy, respect them, let them start, and be there, but be there for them if they need it. The new, you say, okay, well, you can understand, we'll need to show you what to do. And for the yo-yos to go, well, if you didn't have a great experience before, why don't we come back to here? You've already got some knowledge, but we'll just add to that and support you. Would that support be of value? And then drive that. So it's almost, instead of having a one-size-fits-all induction, yeah, we're tailoring it, but we're tailoring it down two routes. It's either this or this. Now, if I say to you, which one of those do you think would be of most value to you or help you be most successful, most people who are in the yo-yo category go, actually, I want the support because I wasn't successful the first time.
Yeah. And with the key thing that seems to be coming out is aiming to keep those visits up, that regular visit and then that interaction, which, I've worked out for 25 years and I've joined a recent club now, I won't say the name because they're a customer as well, but they do a really good job at the interaction. And I wondered whether it's because I tried to get the motivation because I also tried to get into buying more equipment, and I wonder whether, what is there. And I noticed that since he's left and the new manager isn't there, and it's put me in my mind, I'm kind of thinking there's another gym which is a little bit closer, and I've got a bit of a relationship with the owner there. And it's put me on the fence, to be honest, because that other guy, he used to just, he'd just spend some time with me, he'd have a chat. And it's nothing that even really made a difference. Even the conversation didn't really make, but he just kind of made me feel a little bit important. Yeah. And now no one's in there, so I'm going in on it. And I like that, 'cause I don't want to talk to anyone because I've not got a lot of time but having someone that would acknowledge me is also important to me.
And I think, before I came into the health and fitness business, I worked in nightclubs. So, and I was a promoter and an owner and an operator, and we knew running nightclubs, if you spoke to customers on their way in, they were over the moon. If you spoke to them when they were leaving, they were over the moon. It's like, oh, the manager spoke to me. And if you knew them by name and they were with their friends, suddenly it gave them kudos that they'd never had before. So it's about respecting whether people want the interaction. We've noticed more recently on some of our studies that people are more keen to talk on their way out than on the way in. So on their way in, they want to just get in and get on with it. Afterwards, they almost want to talk about what they did so that someone can validate their training sessions. So I think there is this balance between interaction and interruption.
Right, yeah, I'd agree with that.
And I think people who are more experienced in the industry, can look and go, yeah, they want interaction, or they can interact just going, morning, Matt, and how you respond determines how they continue. And if you go, oh, morning, and you keep going, it's like, okay, today he didn't want to talk, or he's too busy. On another day, you might just stop and go, oh, how are you? And it's being able to react to that and not go, oh, he didn't speak to me today, that's it, he doesn't ever want to talk to me again. Because we don't know what's going on in people's minds at this time. We just have to give them that space.
So do you think technology can replace some of that human interaction?
I think some of it can. I never used to, I'll be honest. I used to go, you'll never replace human interaction. And to a level, I still believe that. I think that if you can get the right quality of interaction at the right time, then that's far more impactful. But we are starting to see technologies now that are, in fact, it's the interaction when they're not in the facility being done using technology that drives them into the facility so that then someone can talk to them. So it's getting that balance right. And I think, some of the artificial intelligence programs that are available now that are prompting behaviours, we've just tested a number of email sequences with SMS and videos. We've improved visit frequency from 4 times a month to 8 times a month. And that doesn't require any human interaction. Now, you could mess that up by doing a great job digitally, and then they turn up in the club and someone ignores them. But overall, I think we can mesh the two together.
I guess you got to be aligned and do them very well, haven't you, rather than just focus on technology. Yeah, and I have operators come to me and investors come to me and go, we've got this, we want to do this technology, or can you suggest a technology? And I say, yeah, but if you don't actually look after them when they turn up, then you're only going to all you're going to do is increase the frequency of them turning up to get disappointed. Right. So you have to work on both sides. Yeah. So what about personal training then? Because as an industry, and maybe from where we're coming from, there's a big thing about personal training, the importance and the revenue of personal training. What part do you think that plays in it? And is it more that the people that are doing the personal training are getting that personal interaction, which you say is important, or how important is it to focus on that as a revenue generator on its own, or is it better to use that to get people to stay longer? Where do you sit on that? Okay, so for me, personal training is a revenue generator. It does little to improve retention. And the reason I say that is it doesn't impact enough of the customer group. So if your penetration for PT is 10%, for the gym users, so let's not worry about the group X, so treat them separately. Because PT is often off to people who are using the gym. There's still 90% of the customers that aren't getting affected by PT. Whereas actually a good retention strategy will impact 100% of your customers, and you get the revenue from those who have PT. Now, we do know that people who have PT on a routine basis, so set days and times, end up staying much longer than people who have PT on an ad hoc basis. So I know when I'm in businesses and they're saying, how should we sell our PT? It's like I'm not a salesperson, but I would look at selling packs of PT. Goes back to the Zeigarnik effect. There's a beginning and an end. Spread them out over perhaps 1 a week over 10 weeks and encourage sessions in between that as well. That will increase the lifetime of that customer, which will have an impact on retention. But generally for me, PT revenue is PT revenue, and it may contribute a little bit to retention, but it's not a retention strategy. I wouldn't go into any business and go, if you want to improve your retention, you need to drive PT, because too few people access it. Okay. And in terms of focus then, when you look at revenue, and we've had conversations about this in the past, but what if someone had an option of where to put all their resources to focus on PT and say, right, if it's pure profit, let's look at my personal training program and see, maximise the revenue from that,
Yeah.
or activate a team of people to talk to them, bring them in a club.
Yeah.
Where would you say you're going to get the best return on your investment?
Okay, I think there's two bits you have to think about. One is when if it's a club where someone walks in and joins, so there's a traditional type salesperson, psychologically they're in a buying mode. They're ready to spend money. They're ready to spend money on a membership, and if you package it right, they're ready to spend money on PT. Because that's their mindset. It's like, I'm coming to buy something today. Oh, I've got a membership. Do you want to package PT in with that? Yeah, the mind flows naturally. Once they've bought, when they turn up to train, they're in a training mindset. So if you then try and propose PT to them cold, they're going to go no, because actually they didn't turn up to buy today, they turned up to train. Now, again, we looked at a lot of data from a number of different operators, and what we found was people who buy PT on joining, point of sale, there's quite a big revenue generator from that. But we actually found the next biggest was after 6 months. Right. Customers who are still there after 6 months and training. When we started interviewing people, what it seemed to be was that when they join, often because of the sales process, the marketing process, like, come and join our gym, you'll get all the results you want. So they believe they can do that on their own. And often the clubs make them believe they can do that on their own. You've joined, your body comes next week. After 6 months, they're still struggling to get all the results they wanted. Now they're at a point where they're like, what can I do apart from quitting to try and get this result or go somewhere else? And that's often when they're most likely to buy PT. So I think one of the strategies that a lot of operators are really not picking up on is, and the PTs are doing this as well, they're focusing solely on new customers, where actually 60% of the people who buy PT buy it after 6 months. So there's a much bigger, because those people have tried, failed, and now you can step in and go, how are you getting on? Oh, well, you're getting all the results you were looking for when you first started. You raise that level of, I call it an itch, you raise that level of discomfort and you say, well, look, if you'd be interested in finding ways of getting to those results, I'd be happy to talk to you about that. Right. So you're suggesting the opportunity for PT, or if you want to talk to me about the clients that I've worked with who've got the type of results that you're looking for, we could schedule a discussion about that. Yeah. So you're opening it up for that rather than going, well, do you want to buy PT now? Because as soon as they slap you down for good. Because in their mind, they want to be consistent. I said no before, I need to say no again. So
sometimes it's understanding when they're buying. So they are buying at point of sale, which makes sense. I've seen companies do that well, and nutrition and everything at that point. But then once they're in, it's like, right, okay, I'm sorted now. I'm not in that buying mode at the moment. Yeah. But there's a chance in 3-6 months that I'm going to be assessing my progress, success, and then it's a good time to probably look at it.
Because if I think of it in terms of buying cars, if I go into the car showroom, I pick a car, I'm going through the process. If they say, well, do you want to add this, do you want to add this, I'll do that during that process. If I've bought the car, driven it away, and a month later they ring me up and go, do you want to add this to your car now? I'm like, probably not. I've got my car. But 6 months in, if they say, actually, we've upgraded the fuel management system, or we've got this now, would you like to add that? You've had experience of it, and if the car's not giving you what you wanted it to, you might go for it then. Right. So, but you have to be mindful about how you present that. Yeah.
When you present it as well, And then what about Group X then? So that both, I guess, from a boutique perspective, even more so. How does this work for those guys that are gone that type of model?
I think the thing to think about, and I sort of sit on the fence. I do at some level believe group exercise improves retention, but I also have data that there's no difference in retention between men and women. And seeing as men and women, more women do Group X, I would expect to see it in the data that women stay longer than men. And we've never seen it. We've never seen it anywhere. So there's part of me is like, what's going on there? I'd also think if Group X did retain more people, one, all the class is full. Just because over a year you should sell enough memberships that they retain and the classes just reach capacity. But we do know that people who do Group X do stay a bit longer.
But what you're, sorry, just on that early point then, but what you're saying is in terms of retention as a whole, all the studies you've done, there's no difference between men and women.
There's no difference between men and women. And the challenge we've had in terms of measuring Group X, and we're about to do some big studies on this, is often the club data doesn't tell us where they went. They tell us they're in, but once they're in, we don't know if they went and sat in the sauna, did a swim, did a workout. Some clubs are now using, different types of technologies to track where their customers are, so we can actually see what that is. But up till now, it's been very difficult to do that. When we have done studies on Group X, what we've found is that people who do Group X tend to stay longer than people who just do the gym. What we also found was that most of the people who do some Group X also do some gym, even if it's just go and run on a treadmill or go and use some medicine balls or some battle ropes or some kettlebells. They sort of supplement 15 minutes in the gym with their class. But we've also got to think about routine. And I know a lot of people like to talk about habit. For me, a habit is something that happens without thinking. I don't think, apart from those who are really, really savvy, people are habituated to exercise. I think exercise becomes a routine. It becomes part of their lifestyle. So if they go to a class on a Monday night at 6 o'clock, it's Monday night at 6 o'clock. As soon as we can create routines, and I think that's what we should do with Group X, is we should try and find ways of creating routines so that people in their diaries go, that part of the day is sacred. That part of the day is sacred. Not just for them, but then other people in their work environment, their home environment, go, oh, I can't ask them to do that because they do that on that night. And I know we did a report called the Black Report where we interviewed 1,000 customers who'd been members of 2 gyms. So they joined, stayed, left, joined, stayed, left, or joined, stayed, may have left, may not. Between them, they had 6,500 years of experience. This is mad. But there was a woman that gave me a quote, and that quote was, Thursday night is Zumba night, and on Thursday night I do Zumba. My husband knows that's what I do, and he has to get home early from work and look after the kids. And if he's not going to get home early from work, he has to arrange childcare because Thursday night is Zumba night. Now, that might have been the one time in the week that woman went to the club, but it was so clearly defined that nothing gets in the way of that. And I think that's what group exercise does for a lot of people. It gives them a point of time in their diary where they can go, at this time I do this, at this time I do this. And that's why I think partly the boutiques are successful. I think also they're successful because of the social connection. I'm part of something. The cognitive load is low. I don't have to think. What do you mean?
Okay.
I don't have to think about much.
Right.
And when I turn up, they say stand up, I stand up. They say sit down, I sit down. Whereas if I'm in the gym, I go, right, which cardio, which resistant, what free weights, what functional. I have to think that through. Whereas I think what you're seeing with things like boot camps, with boutiques, small group sessions, yoga sessions, people is like, I don't want to think. I want to be done to almost. Just lead me through it. And I think there's a huge capacity to, if we keep some things a lot simpler, we could draw a lot more people in. Because some of the basic classes start off as basic, but 12 weeks in, the customers have moved forward, the instructor takes it up another level, the new beginner comes in, and actually it's beyond what they can do.
Right.
So I think there's a whole thing we can do. I think group exercise has a lot of more potential than it's already got.
Really?
Yeah. But I think we've got just a traditional way of going, partly it's a show. It's like, I've got to perform, where actually there are simple things we could do in a class that actually raise the level of the experience for the customer, which isn't about the person who's leading the class.
And what were those? So I'll just keep it on boutique then. So what are those things? Do those exact same rules apply, or is there anything additional that they could be doing?
Well, I think what boutiques have done is they've thought about the experience is the product. The whole experience is the product, from arrival to changing to working out. And many of the boutiques that I've tried, someone greets you when you walk into the class. They're actually at the door. You do the class, you watch them lead it. When you finish, they're by the door to say goodbye. It's not, You know, they rush in late, they bend over, I can see their bum, they're trying to sort out their music, they go, sorry I'm late, and then they rush into it, and at the end they're grabbing their stuff and they're off to the next class. They're actually taking time to go, actually I value you. I value the fact you turned up today, and I'm going to recognise that you turned up today. And a simple thing, like one of the things we do in the gym, to the gym staff and front of house staff, is we say to them, when someone leaves, say, when you in next? Now, we found that to have a really powerful impact on people going, I'll be in on Friday. And then they're making that commitment to come in Friday. Group exercise is even easier. You stand at the end of the class finishes, and you say, put your hand up if you're going to be here again same time next week. Now, all the people who think they are going to be will put their hands up. All the ones who don't put their hand up come over and go, I can't be in next week. I'm really sorry, Matthew. I've got work, or I've got... But in their head, they're like, I have to explain why I can't be here, which actually drives them to want to be at the next session even more.
Right, that's very clever, yeah.
So it's very, very simple, you know, and if you've got another class the same week, you know, you do teach Tuesday and it's Thursday, who's going to be here Thursday? You know, I think if you look at timetabling as well, I think clubs could do a lot more in terms of timetabling around almost making that routine easy. So, you know, let's say they do a boot camp functional type class, 6 o'clock on a Monday night. Then they have it 6 o'clock on a Wednesday night and 6 o'clock on a Friday night. Because the chances of you actually being able to cut, if you can come in at 6 o'clock on a Monday night, you'd probably be able to come in at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday and possibly on a Friday, but then you've got your frequency. Then after the boot camp, I'd probably have something relaxing. Now, I'm not a group exercise programmer, but I'm thinking, we often just put things on by availability of our instructors or what we think. We've been running some analysis recently where we're actually going to see if the AI stuff we're using can actually predict which is a better class to put on at which time.
Really?
Yeah. So it won't be down to the group exercise, it won't be down to the studio coordinator to choose the classes. The classes will be chosen by what the customer wants to do at what time.
Right. That's clever.
Yeah, it's going to ruffle a few feathers, but if, you know, I'm customer focused. If that's what the customer wants, why don't we do what the customer wants rather than what suits us? Yeah. It's a bit more uncomfortable for us. I appreciate it's not always easy to get the group exercise teachers you want at the times you want, but I think we'll uncover more stuff there.
Yeah. And do you think for boutiques then it's going to be possible, like a full service club, to keep people coming back for longer in the same way, or what's your thoughts on that?
I've got no data. Well, I've got a limited amount of data on boutiques. But if I go back to my experience, well, all my experience of working in the fitness industry, but also my experience of nightclubs, 9 months, I think is probably what most boutiques can expect out of a customer before they start looking for something else.
Really?
Yeah. When I ran nightclubs, you know, we'd take out a lease on a place and we would know, you know, the first 2 years would be spectacular, would be really profitable. The first 9 months, if you get it right, are unbelievable because it's the new place where everybody wants to go. After 9 months, the trendsetters are looking to move on somewhere else. But you do then get the people who weren't the trendsetters going, oh, I've just heard that's the place to be. And now they're going to it, and it lasts for about 2 years and then it starts to decline. And I think we'll see that in boutiques. I think you'll have those people who are sort of exercise savvy, really on the cutting edge and want something new, will constantly be looking to move on to the next thing, the next thing and the next thing.
Early adopter.
Yeah, they're really early adopters. And I think with such diversity, you know, particularly around LA and New York, there's a new type of boutique opening every week. I actually think we're speeding that up. Because someone's doing something for a few weeks and it's like, oh, there's another new one. Oh, I'll go to that. And there's another new one. I'll go to that. So I think the early adopters, we're going to speed through them really quickly. Right. And it's whether we can make these boutiques sufficiently accessible to a broader range to maintain that over a longer period of time. Right. So they go through the trend of being super popular, but then just become a well-established business doing a really good job. Right. And, you know, I think SoulCycle have managed it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that sounds like it's the secret, is how to... And I was in nightclubs as well when I was younger a lot, and I kind of get that idea, because I used to go and work at the ones that were popular for that period and then move on when they started to let in have to let in riff-raff and the trouble started. But yeah, that does make sense. And I guess really it's trying to take it away from just being the latest thing to being this destination that you continue to go back to for. Like, I guess yoga's something where probably not. It's been around for a long time, and that is more. That's not necessarily faddish. It's just something that you'd go as part of what you do. I suppose.
And for me, so my take on boutiques is this. It's generally studio-based. And then the way in which the content is delivered is designed by that boutique. So it could be yoga, but it's their way of delivering yoga, as opposed to just being a yoga class. So I think we have yoga boutiques, but we have a lot of yoga studios, which is traditional 4,000-year-old yoga that anyone could be doing in any environment. But when I'm in Europe and I'm going to different cities like Amsterdam and stuff, there's some yoga studios there where the way they teach their yoga is their way, and for me that's what makes it a boutique. So it's a combination of it being studio based, group exercise based, and the way they teach it, not just it's a studio,
right?
And it's new. That doesn't make it a boutique for me.
No, that makes sense. So in terms of data, you talked about a lot, and we've not really given scale. So what in the research you've done, how broad and wide is it to give people an idea that you really know what you're talking about? I'm not saying you don't.
That's fine. Okay, so we've myself and my colleague, Dr. Melvin Hilsden, now in the UK, have done 3 national retention reports here in the UK. The last one was 357,000 customers over a 4-year period from 100 different operators. The one we did for North American market was 1.47 million customers over 3 years, and that was USA and Canada. We've done Australia, which was nearly 1 million. I think we were 2,000 customers short of 1 million. Over 900 sites. New Zealand, we've done not as many, but we've done that. So we do big scale studies over long periods of time looking at member behaviour. But then also we do a lot of work for individual companies. So we've collaborated with the likes of Anytime Fitness. We've collaborated with Marriott Hotels, the Gym Group, Lifestyle Fitness, a whole range of operators in mainland Europe. Keep Cool, company called Acmea when they existed in the Netherlands, Elixir before they merged with Sats. So we've now done, I was trying to think of it last week for someone else, I think we've done something close to 4 million member records across something like 40 countries. So, and some of the countries we've only got one club or something really small, but in some of them we've got really vast amounts of data. And what we originally wanted to do was lots of rows, so 1.47 million rows, and we'd only have a limited number of columns, if you think of it in that way. Now what I'm really interested in is how many columns of data can I get? So I'm working with an operator at the moment. We've got 600 columns. So they are able to collect data on what time they come in, what time they went out, where they visited, how long they dwelled in the changing rooms, if they used the changing rooms, did they have any secondary spend, what did they buy? Now all of that can get really noisy, but if you can pick your way through that, there can be some really interesting pieces of information in terms of where you're even going to stand your staff. Because if you can work out where people are at certain times, if you've only got a limited number of staff, you might go at 6 o'clock on a Monday night, you stand there, because 100 people walk past that point in 15 minutes. So rather than go, just walk the gym floor, you won't want them to walk the gym floor, you'll want them there.
It's just real specific.
Yeah. And then you can say this, and then we can test this. So yeah, we've got a large amount. PhD, we ran a randomised controlled trial it was a 12-month study, but it took 17 months to study it because of the people joining. It's the only one of its type. We've got a bit of data.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. Yeah. One is about, outside of what we've spoken about, what do you think are some sort of quick wins that people can take away and focus on in their businesses today that they might not doing. But before I do that, just if people are interested in getting involved with you, getting you guys on board, helping you out, where can they find you? How do they interact with you?
I think if people just want to find out what we're doing from sort of a periphery, like just a look in, two places. One, obviously, we've got a website, retentionguru.com, and that's got lots of information about what we've done as projects and who we work with. But the other one I would suggest at the moment is we do a thing called lunchtime lessons. On LinkedIn and Twitter, they come out Monday to Friday, 1 o'clock UK time, and each day we give a 1 or 2 sentence piece of advice on what clubs should do, or we give some evidence of some research. So you can find that at Retention Guru on LinkedIn as well. And we started those a few months ago, early summer. We were getting 20, 50 views a day. That's about 15,000 views now per post within a 24-hour period. So they've grown, but lots of people then will comment and I'll comment back. Sometimes I can't do it immediately because of travel, but we get back in touch with people there. And I suppose the other thing would be once yearly we do the retention convention in Birmingham in England, where we bring in international speakers that I think are of value to speak to an audience. Small conference, 150, and they share. People just share, and it's a good place to get other views apart from mine. So a lot of the speakers share the views that I have, but some of them come from a different perspective. So those would be the thing: the website, the conference, and LinkedIn, Twitter for lunchtime lessons.
And can people hire you to work on their businesses as well?
We only work with 12 major companies a year. So we're not, if you say, oh, can I come to the Retention Guru offices, we'll arrange to meet you in a Starbucks somewhere or a hotel. So we've got a team, but our team works remotely and we don't have a big office block and lots of staff. We work with 12 major clients and we do projects. Now, I will do public speaking, like I'll speak at a conference, but when people ring me up and say, can you come and do a day on retention because we want to change our business, I'll probably say no, because I can entertain people for a day, I can give them the information, but in a day they're not going to get a grip of it. Right.
So it's really, if they want you, they've got to book you for a whole project, but you can't take too many of those.
No, and I can't take too many. I don't want to take too many. I want to do a really good job with people who are stepping up and saying, we want to make a difference. We've never run a process where we ring people up and say, do you want to improve your retention? We get enough through word of mouth. We work with, if you think about Anytime Fitness, we worked with them on some algorithms and data, because you couldn't visit 4,000, whatever it is, plus sites or however many they've got now. But then I'm working with single site operators as well that are of a reasonable size to help them, because it's, the difference it makes is a difference. So they get the return on investment.
Yeah, great. Okay. So coming back to the question then, so what's some takeaways outside what we've talked about, and there's quite a few things we've covered, but what are a few other things that you'd say, like these are some areas that you should probably look that are not things that you've seen people are probably generally doing in your experience?
I think the first place I'd start, and I know we have talked a fair bit about this, but we were able to rank the impact of different behaviour, different things on a business, 1 to 10. In fact, we can rank them lower than that, but we did a top 10. And the first 3 were visits, interaction and programming, VIP. If they don't visit, you can't interact. If they don't visit, your programming has no impact at all. So it doesn't matter how good you are, you've got to get them to visit. But the interesting was, if they visit, you can interact. If you interact, you can keep a track of their program. If their program is of a valid type of protocol, interacting with them on a more regular basis, they will not only come back, they'll start to see the results, they'll come back, they'll believe that you can offer more results. So you build a trust, you build this, I call it a virtuous cycle. So those would be the top 3. And if you're not doing those, you're probably not getting the best out of your business. Because after that... Is it
kind of a bit 80-20,
Yeah.
It is,
yeah, very much so. And, we've done analysis on queuing, and does queuing impact how long people stay? Well, yeah, it does. And 50% of the people that say queuing is important or a deterrent for them coming in are likely to quit. But they're only 5% of the membership. So that's 50% of 5%. Right. So if you could sort out the queuing, you'd have some impact, but nothing like if you spoke to people at the right time, right place. I think the new digital technologies are going to have a real impact. I think we're just at the sort of getting to this point now where people understand behavioural science from a technology perspective, that we'll be able to harness that and combine that with human interaction. And I think that'll be available across all sizes of business. I don't think you're going to need to be, a multi-country, multi-site, high-end business to have AI in your business. I think, clubs of about 1,000 members could easily have an AI support product that would help to keep their 1,000 customers going. Small PT studios, probably a different type of relationship there. They're not going to need the AI type stuff because the volume of customer, they can literally ring the customer up or go, you're booked in, we'll see you then. So I think the PT studio's got a different relationship. I do think we're going to see a massive growth in group exercise, but I do think group exercise has got to get its act together with regard to retention that isn't just the class. It's almost like, if we got a group X, then they're going to stay, and they rely on that. And I think there's a whole heap of things that go around that could actually enhance that further. That I've not seen many people do yet. No. But the ones who have started to do it, really creating these experiences, really creating a sense of community and belonging, they're just going to grow if they want to, or they're going to establish a really sound business. Yeah,
it's amazing how, I guess, so I've been to so many conferences, and this is always a big discussion, and it really, from what you've said to me and looking at all that data, millions of people, it does come down to some real simple basics of looking at. I don't want to oversimplify what you're saying, but it's surprising, isn't it, really? It's how easy it is to forget getting the basics right and spend time with all the latest and greatest things when really, just do a good job, interact, look after your customers, be there for them, say hi. And get them coming on a fairly frequent basis, and
I've spent the last 15 years telling people pretty much, our knowledge of the industry has evolved, our great research has evolved, but it does come back to a lot of basics. But you'd be surprised how hard it is to get people to focus on the basics. They just want to do what's new, what's faddy, what's trendy, or what's the magic bullet. And you go, keep the club clean. What? And you go, no, if the club's not clean, then it's not going to be a nice environment for people to visit.
I know the guys, we did a podcast with Randy Dobson and the guys from California Fitness, and they said it's a simple business, it's a very simple business, but it's not easy. And I guess that's pretty correct. Doing some of these things, it's very simple, but getting, particularly if you've got a lot of sites, in the hundreds, it's not easy to kind of get everybody behind and make this work, I guess.
But Matt, if you think about at the high end, first of all, Four Seasons, Intercontinental Hotels, they get it right every time, every country they go into, no matter where it is, but it's a formulaic product. Everything's laid out. There are systems. We do this. They hire the type of people who are happy to do that. At the other end of the spectrum, you got McDonald's. No one believes McDonald's create the best burgers in the world, but anywhere you go, it tastes the same. And they've got stores run by kids. Yeah. Run by kids. And it's like, how long does the burger go on? The burger goes on there, then we turn it over, it's set, it's procedural. I was talking to an operator recently, said, our fitness staff don't want to do gym inductions and I don't know what to do. And I'm like, who do they work for? And he went, well, they work for me. And I went, then it shouldn't be an option if that's part of your process. But I think there's not too many thinkers, but I think there's sometimes they don't run the business as a business. Yeah. You actually have to be a bit more procedural.
And is that do you think it's just because it's still a fairly young industry compared to hospitality and like the sort of catering restaurant world, or?
I could give it the get out of jail free card by going, yeah, but I think no. I think this will rattle a few cages. I think we have too many managers that like the title manager, like the money of manager, but don't like to manage. When it comes down to it, they don't like the hard bit, which is the tough bit, which, I'm saying to the people I work with, the hard part, the bit you get paid the more money for in managing is the stuff that's uncomfortable. It's not the easy stuff. It's when you have to reprimand someone for not following their processes, for not doing. And I think too many businesses let people get away with stuff because it's easier to let them get away with it. They believe it doesn't impact the business, but it impacts their ability to scale. Starbucks don't have a problem scaling, do they?
No.
And they kept it really simple. But it's a good enough product for what they're offering.
Yeah, and it's consistent.
It's consistent,
yeah.
And they can open it in China and Japan and every other country that wants it, unless they've got really good quality coffee, like New Zealand.
Yeah. Well, Paul, it's been a fantastic lesson. I've certainly learnt a lot, it's been an eye-opener. I thought I was going to come up with all this science and all this data about what we need to do, but it's,
We can do that another time.
Yeah. Paul, thank you very much.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
you coming in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.